It's great to see you all today. As I said before, happy Wednesday to you. This is the weekly briefing, this once a week time. We just take away from our computers, ask some bigger questions. And often these are inspired by conversations we're having in community or really the bigger challenges that we see in the industry. Last week, I showed some of the demographical information of what's going on in the industry. And one of the key elements was sales and what I'm calling these unicorn studios that are really, really busy over the last 5 weeks. And many of you who are not feeling that same pressure or that same ability to keep yourself busy. And I wanted to ask myself the bigger questions. But this week, beyond that, we're launching these small groups in Confab. And these Confab small groups, one of the big challenges presented that we want to conquer together is this thought process of how do I grow my sales base? And so I'm been studying and talking to people and walking through some theories of what's going on in the industry to talk to that group of people. And they're really asking me today how to grow my sales base in 2024, not just systematically how to do it. And I think that's an interesting point to make because what we're up against a little bit is a different economy that many of us had to face from in the last 2 years or so. And if we're all freely admitting it, we were a little bit spoiled for the last couple of years. We had this ability to, reach out. There's enough work going on. We probably knew enough people at the agencies or people at the tech companies or whatever that we can just make a phone call. And they had so much work to do, they can just give you something and award something to you. So different than today. There's such a different situation now where we can't find the people. We're being ghosted by them. But then this really weird thing is happening to a few where they get awarded one project and the client just slips in 3 more at the same time. They didn't have to pitch for it. They didn't even know they're up for it. But the client is saying, hey, I have this burden. Can you actually take up something larger off my hands? And I think that there's a play out in the economy that's making that happen. If I was a client and I thought maybe my job, my responsibilities were shifting, I might be in a company that's being merged into another company or bought and sold or cutbacks. I want to make my life easy. And before I might have been playing politics of hey, spreading out the work or showing that I'm a good steward of the company's money by making sure I'm getting a discount across the board. But today I might be saying to myself, well, I don't know if I have a long-term relationship with this company. So I'm going to kind of make it easy on myself. And I have a different pressure, a different stress. And so I'm going to give it to these people that I trust. So I think that's the key fact that we're picking up on is there's trusted sources for work that clients give at key moments and stressful times. So how do we find that trust? How become that trust? Relationship-based sales, right? So that's what inspired the conversation today. It's just looking at the demographics, looking at the trends, trying to take on a bigger question of growing the customer base or the client base, and then asking the question, what is winning and how might it win? And obviously, I'm going to differentiate between a relationship-based sales and then some other type of sales today. But that's what's inspiring us. Before we get started too far, Matt, we are recording. I'm recording. I think we're good there and have ourselves spotlit. I just want to kind of throw out an idea for you as we're processing this, because I was trying to think about how do we relate what the issue is in this, we'll say, trust economy that's putting itself out there, and how do we evolve ourselves into something that's relational? We as humans are relational. We honestly, we need to be in a relationship to survive. That's a tribal mentality. That's how we survive to be a 28,000-year-old species on the planet, is that the ability to trust each other and work with each other and build things together. But there's also a need relationship, isn't there? Where I only have a relationship with some because they give me something. I might not always give them something back. In a service-based economy, I'm actually trying to put myself out there more to grow and to have more opportunity to serve a body of people. The takers I might want to push away. So there's these give and take and push and pull relationships we have in business. And many of us are engaged in those with our clients and with our employees and with our vendors and so on. So what makes something more in a relational category than just say transactional in its category?
Yeah. I mean, just to jump in, Tim, I found when I had a studio, the actual process of speaking to clients in a non-transactional way was really, really hard. I mean, you get used to seeing yourself as a vendor and you take it personally if they don't give you work. But to actually view them as a person that's your age and you might want to hang out with, I mean, I certainly found it easier when I had kids and suddenly I had these other things to talk about other than work. But yeah, speaking to them like people and suggesting, hey, let's hang out in a way that I may not walk away from this conversation with a new job. That's a leap.
Yeah, it's a leap, and it's an investment, isn't it? Where the relationship based program process is something that we have to have planted the seeds and have constantly be kind of caring for those seeds the entire time, instead of a transactional can just be like buying the goods at the grocery store. The transaction is like, what, now that's all said and done, can I have that? And I'll give you, or you give me something. But early on, to grow and to harvest and to kind of build out something that will be there in the long run because you plant those seeds, that's a very kind of different investment of our time. And maybe there's some even risk attached to that, of who we choose to invest in, and will they be there, or will that company be there? Those are things that many of us have been in business long enough to know that that's true. Some of these relationships that we have, they don't always play themselves out the way we want to.
Yeah, there is no guarantee. But how do you focus on who you think is worth investing your time in?
Yeah, to me, like there's a strange part of like the transactional relationship that we have that feels somewhat unnatural to us. And I think that's why many people, Matt, when you and I are talking to them as consultants, or many of you are talking, in a conference, we have salespeople do this work for us because we say to ourselves, I don't like to do sales. And the first image that we talk about as sales is like this used car salesman personality. And the idea of like the whole job is just to push my goods on you, no matter if you need it or not. And I think that transactional based account management or transactional based sales really has that connotation of it's all about the transaction. And we'll say like, hey, for the last 2 years, maybe 3 years, it could only have been transactional. There was so much work to be done, or so much growth in certain categories, or maybe just a feast and famine with our own business. We're looking at in the short run constantly, and we didn't really invest or have time to invest in it, and there was no offense taken in that realm. There is a part of relational that I think is interesting. I think of this like when I lived out in like in a small village, actually, not about 25 miles from where I live right now. We lived in a small town, 1,500 people. The town had like 5 total like civic buildings, if you want to call it. There was a school and a fire station. There was one store and a post office. And then there was like a feed store or something I never went to, like it was just another place that people went. But at the growers market every Monday, the town felt like it came out for the growers market. And the growers market was really interesting because you had to have grown or made or produced the goods to be in that market. So it was a very small market. There wasn't a lot to choose from. But when me and my family went there and we got our loaf of bread and goat milk and basil or whatever we were grabbing, we knew the people. We probably spent more time at this 12 spot growers market getting almost every good we needed to for the week. Then if we went to, say, Whole Foods, which in America has plenty of good organic product and really rich meat and good product, but it's only transactional. I kind of go in there, I grab my stuff on the shelf, and I walk away. And I think about the difference of what it meant to go to a place that has nutrient dense, the person that made it from scratch. You have these kind of, something that we can relate to because we're in the same town, or, talking about the same weather, or whatever that is, to something that's just like convenient. Here's an ATM card, we get something in and we do something. And I like that image of what we're trying to do now in this economy, to say, hey, I think I might have to show my goods a little bit more. I might need to come alongside those clients and let them know like I've cared for them, or I've cared for the work that we've come about. And it's going to take me longer to show them that work, but when the time is done, they're going to trust it. They're going to know it's worth buying it from. And then the transaction is not just exchanging goods for goods, but it's also like spending some moments with them to learn about their life and their health and their, what they're about and what issues they might have, with the idea that there's discovery. If we actually invest our time and our effort into these relationships, there's a moment of discovery that will help us personally grow as a business or as a business owner.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was funny. Like when I worked at Deloitte, consultants were very good at discovery, and they'd even sell discovery as a whole beginning of an engagement. Like, yes, we're going to do a discovery sprint, which is like someone literally paying to get to know you. But I just know from my background in the studio, I definitely didn't have the chutzpah of a consultancy, and I definitely didn't have anyone willing to pay to get to know me. So when you talk to people and you try to get them to flip this whole idea about slowing the relationship down, slowing that need to sell down, how do you get someone in the shallow end of thinking about what discovery looks like? How do you get them feeling comfortable calling someone up without necessarily there being any immediate goal at the end of that call? Or is the goal, I'm just going to get to know them a little bit better? What's a baby step?
Yeah. And it's a really good question. And that's why it's kind of like bad news for some of us right now, because the effort it's going to take, it is not asking, right? It's not, hey, I need a job. Do you have something? Give it to me. And when they say no, if you're in that situation, you move on from that relationship to find the next transaction. A lot of the reality of discovery is be willing to take the time to listen. It's kind of why I explained the need in what's happening in our economy, so you can actually hear that these buyers, their life shifted, their needs have shifted because of who they are within a corporation that has some bigger stuff going on than just this one project. So how they perform, or how they get good scores, or how they look to be collaborative within their own team, or whatever those scorecards are that they've had to meet and live up to within their business, maybe those shifted. And the analysis that you're able to do, maybe even outside of the conversation, allows you to build up that trust, that relationship, because you can then collaborate with them of where they are, instead of them giving you something in only a transactional way. They have their strategy, you have your strategy. The two strategies don't have to meet.
And maybe just because I'm a dummy, what do you think, like when we go down to those metrics, like what matters for them?
To the client?
Yeah.
So obviously we have to read. There was a guy named Will Travis that did a conference with us years ago. Some of you guys remember this Catalyst event we did at Promax. And Will brought to the table this idea of a personality test that he can look at somebody and try to figure out which one were they? Were they the square, or the triangle, or the circle, or the squiggly line? And based off of that, he knew how to approach them with different needs or questions, understandings, or even understand what drives them differently. A square-based personality is a bit more formal, more cut, maybe more along the lines of an accountant. Circle-based people are more relational. When we did this program, they stood in when we had the circle people just gather, they naturally just stood in a circle and looked at each other. It was fascinating to watch the different personalities, and the squiggly lines, as you imagine, they're kind of all over the place. They might be more creative and trying to push themselves. So what I liked about Will's understanding is he's invested in, with his eyes and his knowledge, to understand who he's talking to and relate to that person where they are. Many of us feel awkward, so we want to always put ourselves first. We want to show them our work and hope they do the hard work. But to do the work ourselves is kind of cool, that we can bring that to the table first.
Yeah, we had a similar personality matrix at Deloitte called business chemistry. And there were like pioneers and innovators and guardians. And I forget the fourth one, because I only ever dealt with guardians. And guardians were like, I remember sitting at a table with a bunch of people who had come up with the score Guardian. They were just like, yeah, man, Guardians are the best. Like, we stop shit going wrong. We get shit done. We get promoted faster. We're not like those super loose pioneers and innovators. And I totally related to being a pioneer and an innovator. But what I learned was that these Guardians, which you might just call risk averse people, they once you learned to speak their language, they were great to have in your corner. And once you could start to go, all right, so I can't just throw a random loose idea at you, because that's going to make you feel uncomfortable. I need to present it like this, and I need to give you a timeline, or I need to give you these certain things to make you feel comfortable with with what matters to you.
It's interesting. I'm doing this conference in a couple of weeks with Blair, and so Blair Ends, and I opened up his book. It's been years since I read Win Without Pitching. And part of his manifesto and part of and his ideas are, related to what we're talking about today. And this concept of like, instead of pitching, instead of like throwing yourself out there and always, proving something or expecting the deck, or the term I use, the wallpaper, just the pixels you're putting in front of people to do all the work and be able to prove something to the viewer, the client, instead of translating for them. And Blair really encouraged this idea of like, just put that down for a minute, put that part down. And instead, let's choose to listen. Let's choose to be an expert that has a moment of discovery that's more curious about the client and their process and their needs than in the needs we have today. Now, so I want to say this again. There's a season happening right now that this is becoming more relevant than not. I'll tell you, a year ago, I would have said to you, it's not there. This is not the time to be like deep relational based, right? It just felt like for many of us who are business owners on the front end, and that feast and famine cycle we live in, if we can't maintain a system, we are very systematic and we are very programmatic in our sales. We might even use, some AI tool on LinkedIn or some AI system within an email to do this outreach for us. And that automation felt very, very, very good. And it was a season for it. What's caught up to us is that automation removed that gap of listening because the automation was doing it. And then the companies that gained in the last 2 months, the ones that are getting landed $1 million months, are the ones that have these embedded salespeople in their company, or a long-term dedicated rep to their company. And that rep maintained that because they're a human, their job was to be the sales automation tool. They were the ones doing the work themselves, so that they listened and understood. So when the time came and a person needed to do a larger transaction, got awarded one, we'll give you 3 on the side, kind of a deal. That relationship is what won. What's not going to be able to get through today is to just hope you can get to fast relationships. Now there's still work out there. I'm not claiming there's no work, but this thought process of what 2024 has given us is a need to develop a trust cycle very differently than the automation cycles in the past. And then here's the internal thing that's pushing us forward. In this listening tour that we're going to do, we're going to learn something about the services we provide and where they don't fit anymore. We might have wanted to be a promotion company, and now visual effects is creeping in because our skill level seems to be matching, that 3D aesthetic design that's needed today. And so that evolution of our own company might come from this listening tour, for better or worse. And that's the entrepreneurial question. Do you want to pursue that or not? But the thought process of like evolution is pushing itself against us. Evolution is asking us to ask different questions so that we can evolve, take on bigger needs and think differently. 2024 is asking us to do that because our clients, they've moved on. Their companies are strong.
I got 2 questions for you, Tim. And this is because I remember when I was trying to wrap my head around this whole idea that I might be able to be friends with a client, or I might be able to just call them up. But the first one is, what does a non-transactional relationship look like? And then the second one is like, just say there were 3 steps to getting there, just to kind of going, I like Simon. We've got kids about the same age. I could call him up. We could go play racquetball or pickleball or whatever Americans like to do in their spare time. So what does a good non-transactional relationship look like? Like, what are we steering towards? And then once you said that, how do we get there?
Yeah, sure. So I've been thinking of models, and there's truly no better model than the idea of how doctors work in our life. Most likely, if I had a sickness or illness, or for some reason needed to go to the ER, I'm probably not going to develop a relationship with the ER doctor. Like I'm glad they're there. They're performing a service. I'm glad they're highly educated, and I'm glad they're a generalist, so that whatever issue I have, I go in the ER and that person's there. That transaction is very needed, very important, very valuable. But the doctor I chose is the same doctor my wife chose, is in a practice where that they believe in the kind of healthcare that I want to believe in, and they accept my insurance policy that's a little bit goofier than the normal policy, or that they give me certain vitamins or do certain treatments that seem to work for me that aren't generally available, or not everyone in a general audience would or a general group would pursue those. That's fitting to me. And so when I meet with that doctor, she's asking, "Who are you, Tim? And how's this progress going?" She knows enough about me and is invested in conversations with me that I'm transactionally working with her. How did I get there? How did I ever know that she was the right person, or know that I wanted to do this transaction with her? Well, it's because, one, I have an understanding of who I am already, what my needs are, and that person presented themselves as that expert that I should pursue. And I think many of us know the voice of expertise. We have it, and people are looking for the expertise and can find it. The generalist noise is not going to ask for a relationship. Hey, I'm one of everybody. Okay, that sounds transactional to me. But the voice of expertise says, oh, you're worth pursuing. Hey, maybe I will go invest my time and tell you about my health. I'll tell you about my company. I'll tell you about the jobs that I have. I'll make this relational from the client coming to you as the expert. I want to have an understanding of what you do and how you're going to help me. That's a key element to get things started. And then from our side, from the expert side, I want to say to you, don't blow it. Don't not hear what they're saying when they invite you into the room and you show up with just pixels and you go really fast to your presentation, trying to get it all in really fast on something they could have looked up on your website already. You almost want to say, and I think this is from Blair's book, if I remember right, he just says, like, put down the deck. Like, walk into the room with a notebook and a pen and say, where are we? What are we talking about? What do you have going on? Do you really need a visual reference? Here, I'll get on my cell phone. I'll send you a link to what I'm talking about. But maybe the conversation is a lot more valuable right now, a lot more important than the transaction. We'll get there, but I have to hear what's going on. That's the relational-based accounting that we're talking about.
Yeah, I had to remind myself when I had a studio, just that I might be the most interesting person they speak to all day. Like, they might have to sit in meetings and look at numbers and talking to clients, like they're selling all day, like they're pitching their butt off. But then when you, the shiny creative full of goofy ideas and who thinks about unicorns and pandas all day, you rock in, you might actually be the light of their day. And to kind of just remind yourself that you're the fun one. And even though it's really important, and even though it really matters to have a great meeting and that they understand, you can follow up with the deck, you can send them that stuff later. But if you've got 45 minutes with them, as you said, Tim, I mean, I like listening is like a highly underrated skill in this world right now. Like, we're all the way social media works, the way marketing works, so much of it is one way. Everyone's broadcasting out there. When someone listens to me nowadays, I find it so refreshing. I find it mind-blowing, actually, when someone listens to me or even asks me a question. No one asks questions.
I learned two things from you, Matt, right now. One is that you like pandas and unicorns. That's a very interesting. Is that an Australian thing, the panda part of it? Because I didn't know that was part of everything here.
Panda's a me thing.
You're totally right. There is something else that's happening in all of our life transactions right now, and that's this blanket of noise that we get. And honestly, that garbage we get in our Instagram feed of just like pushing and pushing and pushing, that when they mixed advertisement into that feed, all of a sudden you almost are like, you don't trust anything that's coming, like stop on a video for what, and if it's not educational or it's not something that I've already invested in, that I know that it's going to be a good source of information, then it's just someone selling me goods. I don't want to hear that. Why would I want to do that transaction in my day-to-day business when I'm inviting somebody to my office or inviting someone to be part of a process with me? I kind of want to hear something that I don't yet know, or there's an evolution of a capability I need to be exposed to, or an understanding of something greater that we need to have a conversation about. Where would I fit that into a regular transactional conversation? So I think that's the gain we're looking for here, is that first step is all we're saying. And I want to say it again, like, this is not going to be easy. You have to almost go, sadly, 1-to-1, right? We can't go right now, just fill our pocketbooks full of relationships and hope we collected all the baseball cards in a way. These are people we're going to have to know and process with. So strategically, as a consultant, I'm saying to you, like, go make relationships and then be smart of who those relationships are with.
Yeah.
Many of us need to know when to say goodbye to certain relationships, when what's coming at us are, the people that love us are the ones that are getting us on the cheap, and they keep coming back to us because they know that they can take advantage of that relationship. And we need to move on from that to healthy relationships with people, and knowing that there's a lot more we can contribute. Or Matt, like you said, remind ourselves that we're the ones being sought after. We're the ones with the unicorns, pandas, and creative ideas that push that message, their message forward, and they like us and they want us to contribute that part in their life.
It's so easy to forget. I'm having iPad problems today, so I see that someone's got a chat, a chat, and I can't actually get to it. But if that's you, please jump off mute and.
Oh yeah, it's Laura just chiming in and saying, if you really get to know your clients, you can understand better how to help them. And that's exactly right, Laura.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, like, let's also be smart in this idea of like, we're a service to a degree, but we're also an asset in the relationship as well. So we don't have to just give it all away because we're being relational. We do want to help. We want to help to the degree that we can be helpful. And we're also professionally having relationships with people, right? It's not that we have to know every child's name of every client they're working with. It's good if you know that. It's good if you connect in that way. But if you don't, that's also just fine too. We said it last week, it's the trust factor. How do I get past the moment where I know you, but can I give you more burden from my workload to you, so that, to help me kind of move my projects along? That's the opportunity we're looking for. And many of us know, like, that desperation that we walk in with can be smelt as soon as we walk in the room. And that's why I said at the beginning, like, we hate sales. We're wearing sales when we walk in the room. So we need to kind of put that down and think differently.
Yeah. And one life hack you're talking about, asking questions and remembering things about people. You're allowed to write notes about clients. It's not creepy to say they've got twins and one of them's got asthma, or he loves baseball. I had this freelancer who had a terrible memory. I remember like clearing out his computer and this little text message came up, and he'd written names and notes of everyone that actually sat around him in this animation circle. Like, Simon looks like Alan Partridge, likes this. Kind of, he'd written these random notes, but they meant something to him, so that he could go in the next day and go, just wouldn't have to ask their name every time.
It's smart. It's good. Yeah, let's start with remember people's names. That's a very relevant moment in relational-based.
It's a good start.
So let me just wrap up with a couple of big thoughts here. First of all, relation-based sales is what's happening right now. We just have to know it's happening. The product-based or transactional-based way we've been doing sales for the last few years, it doesn't mean it's gone away. You still need to keep up the routines and practices of sales. What I'm asking you to do is actually invest more into that routine and go deeper into analyzing who these clients are, finding the wins sooner, and not sticking with and investing in relationships that we aren't going to be healthy, aren't going to play themselves out. So just don't lie to yourself. Don't carry things forward that you don't have to carry forward. We have to be smart about who we're investing in and how we're going to put that out there. We can post things about for people before they actually connect with us. So with someone in mind and thinking about something, that's what social media is for. How do we put out good news or understanding or move the conversation forward without it just being your wallpaper of graphics of things that you've done recently? I think that's a very important aspect to it. And then here's the real win. Once you have a relationship, those relationships bring on new relationships. That's what we're going to discuss in the small group, is growing our client base, is taking the relationships we have and then seeing if those relationships will help you introduce you to new relationships, instead of just hoping that you can, that if you build it, they will come mentality of like, I'm going to change my demo reel and get into a new capability. That's a lot of effort, where the easier effort is just to walk through one door and walk out that back door into someone else's front door. And we want to work through that process methodically to know what the investments are like and how we're going to get there. And lastly, we keep in mind, we're all business people. We have to actually have our business mind intact here. It is a transactional relationship also. So we don't want to just dive in too deep and slow down all of our growth. We have to think through this thing systematically and organically to make sure that we're investing, moving forward, and building as we grow. Our entrepreneurial formula still works, so we want to put that out there as much as possible. Those are all big thoughts, I know, but I just want to put it out there. I think something big is happening. I want you to know about it. I'm looking at it in trends. I'm looking at it in conversations, and I'm looking at it when it comes to consulting. And I'm just going to keep on sharing with you as this thing evolves, so we can all be on top of it. If you do want to be part of the small groups, they are launching this week. They're just accountability groups. So if you want to walk through relational-based sales in your business, and you want to do it with a group of people who are doing it at the same pace and have them hold you accountable, feel free to reach out to me on community or Erich on community. We can get you signed up and tell you about the events happening tomorrow and Friday, if you're interested. That's all I got. How'd I do?
It's
pretty good, right?
That's a good start, man. If you only, and it takes a few bites of the pie to actually wrap your head around this stuff, but think about who you want to have a relationship with and think about how you're going to get that started.
I'll tell you about one more thing that's coming up. March 15th, Blair Enns, David Baker, and myself are teaching, we're discussing. It's a roundtable conversation about exit and exit strategy within businesses. This is not for everybody. This is not, a generic conversation, a general conversation, but many of us are probably 3 to 5 to 7 years out from a potential exit of our business. If you don't think about it correctly, when the time comes for the exit, you lost all your value. You waited too long to play itself out. That's a big concern of mine. When David and Blair reached out to me to ask what kind of conference I want to talk about, I said, that's what I want to talk about. I want to put that out there. So it is a very small group, only 15 seats, but if you're interested, I put that in community. And again, I know that's just for a few of you, but it's happening. And if the conversation feels right, feel free to reach out to me. I'll put you on the list.
Yeah, I have to say, when I sold my business, I had no idea about that stuff. I would have loved that conversation.
Yeah, and I've helped people, and it's just to look back 3 years in financials. If you didn't prepare those financials 3 years before and didn't play the right game 3 years into it, the day you're ready, you're giving it up for like pennies on the dollar, because you could have performed better for those 3 years. And I just feel it coming. The 2006 boom of businesses that got started, they're in their 18th year right now. So I know we're going to start asking different questions as a community. So I want to get my head wrapped around that as soon as possible. All right. Thank you all. We're over time, but thank you all for being part of this weekly briefing. We really do appreciate and love you. We'll say it every week. We exist so you can thrive in business, life, and career. We mean with all our hearts. So thanks for being part of the conversation, and we'll see you in community. Take care.
Thanks so much. See ya.